Look closely at the screen. Ignore the smile. Ignore the expensive suit. Look at the micro-expressions. You know this feeling. It is a biological alarm bell ringing deep in your hindbrain. Evolutionary psychologists call it the uncanny valley, the revulsion you feel when looking at something that appears human but is missing the spark of life. But what if that instinct is not a mistake? What if it is a survival mechanism? You are not looking at a human being. You are looking at a biological suit, a hollow shell being piloted by something else entirely. For decades, we have called them elites, leaders, or celebrities. We analyze their policies and their art, assuming they think like us. This is the first fatal error. They do not possess a mammalian brain structure. They are operating on a predatory frequency that your mind is programmed to ignore. But the camouflage is failing. In the last 5 years, high-definition cameras have captured thousands of anomalies. Eyes shifting into vertical slits, skin losing its texture, limbs moving with impossible, disjointed fluidity. These are not camera artifacts. These are the glitches of a possession in progress. To understand who is ruling your world, you must understand the concept of the walk-in. In the esoteric traditions, the physical body is merely a container, a vehicle. For the average person, the soul is locked to the body at the moment of birth. But for the ruling bloodlines, the body is a temporary asset. They view the human vessel as we view a rental car. When the original occupant becomes inconvenient, or when the bloodline requires a system upgrade, the original soul is ejected. This is not science fiction. This is the core secret of the mystery schools dating back to Babylon. They call it soul scalping. It is the technological and ritualistic removal of a human consciousness to make room for an interdimensional parasite. But here is the terrifying question you should be asking. How do they get in? A human soul does not just leave. It clings to the body with immense force. To evict a soul requires a trauma so severe, a terror so absolute, that the spirit shatters. We will reveal the exact method of this fracturing and the Project MK Ultra connection later in this video. The entities we are dealing with are often referred to as reptilian, but that is a simplification of a fourth-dimensional biology. These creatures exist in a density just outside your visible spectrum. They are energy parasites. They cannot interact with this physical reality with money, with politics, with war, unless they have a hand to hold the pen and a finger to pull the trigger. They need a host. But the integration process is flawed. You have seen the bruises, the black eye club. Why do so many royals, popes, and politicians appear in public with a black bruise specifically on the left eye? The media tells you it was a fall, a clumsy accident. The truth is far more surgical. There is a biological entry point for these entities, a soft tissue pathway that leads directly to the center of the brain. It involves a process known as droning, where a proboscis enters through the eye socket to sever the connection to the divine. We will walk you through the anatomy of this ceremony in Section 4, but understand this: once that connection is severed, the human you knew is dead. What remains is a drone. Once the swap is complete, the entity is in control. But piloting a human body is difficult. It requires immense energy. The entity is like a pilot trying to fly a plane built by an alien civilization. When their concentration slips, or when they are startled by a sudden flash of light, the hologram fluctuates. These are the shape-shifting videos you see on the dark web. The vertical pupil is the entity peeking through the veil. However, there is a catch. The human body rejects the parasite. Just as your body fights an infection, the biological cells fight the reptilian consciousness. To stop the body from decaying, to keep the flesh from rotting off the bone while they are still using it, they require a very specific chemical supplement, a substance harvested from the blood of terrified innocents. Without it, their camouflage dissolves completely. We are going to explain exactly how they harvest this substance and the role of the adrenal gland in just a moment. But first, we must understand where these entities come from and why they are so desperate to escape the fourth dimension. You are asking where they come from. You are looking at the sky, waiting for ships. This is the second fatal error. They are not extraterrestrial in the way Hollywood has conditioned you to believe. They are interdimensional. They are not coming from another planet. They are coming from another density. Physics tells us that visible light is a tiny sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum. We know that radio waves, gamma rays, and X-rays exist all around us, invisible but real. These entities operate on a similar principle, residing in the lower fourth dimension. This is a frequency band that sits just above our physical reality, vibrating between 4 and 7 Hz. In this state, they are like smoke. They have consciousness, they have intent, and they have hunger, but they lack mass. They cannot pick up a weapon. They cannot sign a treaty. They cannot extract gold from the ground. To manipulate the physical world, they need a glove, and that glove is the human body. The Gnostics, 2,000 years ago, wrote about this explicitly in the Nag Hammadi library. They called these entities archons, the rulers. They described them as mind parasites, inorganic beings that envy the human ability to create. Because they exist in a lower entropy state, they are cut off from the source of creation. They are biologically incapable of generating their own light. They are a dying species, perpetually starving, looking at our reality like a freezing man looks at a fire. This infestation is not new. It is the hidden thread of all human history. In ancient Sumer, they were the Anunnaki, the ones who came from heaven to earth, not to uplift us, but to enslave us. They established the first royal bloodlines, the divine right of kings, which was simply a contract. The humans gave the entities access to physical rule, and in exchange, the entities gave the humans forbidden knowledge, technology, math, agriculture. The tools of civilization were given to us solely to make us better workers. This pact formed the Brotherhood of the Snake, the oldest secret society on Earth. It has changed names 1,000 times, from the mystery schools of Babylon to the Knights Templar to the modern Committee of 300, but the master remains the same. The handshake has never been broken. The elite families we see today are the direct genetic descendants of those first hybrid bloodlines. They are bred for compatibility. They keep their bloodlines pure, not out of snobbery, but out of biological necessity. A Rh-negative blood type with high copper content is a better conductor for the fourth dimensional frequency. It holds the possession better. If you put a high-voltage entity into a low-voltage nervous system, the fuse blows. The body dies. This is why they are obsessed with genealogy. We mentioned in the last section that these entities require a substance to survive. We spoke of the chemical supplement, but the chemical is just the physical manifestation of their true food source. The substance is merely a battery. The true power is loosh. Loosh is a term coined by Robert Monroe to describe emotional energy. Remember, these beings are cut off from the divine source. They have no internal battery. They must steal energy to survive. And the most potent form of energy in the universe is high-intensity human emotion. But they cannot digest love or joy. Those frequencies are too high. They vibrate too fast. These entities are bottom feeders. They feed on low-frequency waves, terror, anxiety, pain, rage, and sexual depravity. This explains the state of the world. You look at the endless wars, the manufactured pandemics, the media-driven panic, and you think it is incompetence? You think it is just greed? No. It is a farming technique. The world is structured to maximize the production of loosh. When you are afraid, you are bleeding energy. When you are fighting your neighbor, you are serving dinner. They are not just ruling you, they are eating you. The adrenochrome, the physical blood harvested from a terrorized victim, is simply louche in liquid form. It is the concentrated essence of fear, a superdrug that allows a fourth-dimensional ghost to anchor itself firmly in a third-dimensional body. So we have a parasitic race that feeds on fear, inhabiting the bodies of our leaders to farm us for energy. Why don't we see them? Because they have constructed a frequency fence. They have tuned our reality through fluoride, through electromagnetic smog, through the media, to lock our perception into a tiny bandwidth. They are standing right next to you, but your radio dial is tuned to the wrong station. However, simply having the right bloodline and the right energy source is not enough to execute a full takeover. You cannot just shove a reptile soul into a healthy human vessel. The human soul is stubborn. It is resilient. It occupies the space fully. To put the intruder in, you must first carve out a hole. You must shatter the original occupants so completely that they retreat into the furthest corners of their own mind, leaving the driver's seat empty. This is the darkest part of the agenda. It is not something that happens to adults. It begins in the nursery. It requires a systematic fracturing of the mind, known as trauma-based mind control. How do they turn a human child into an empty vessel waiting for a pilot? The answer lies in the classified files of Project MK Ultra and the horrific science of dissociation. Physics dictates that two objects cannot occupy the same space at the same time. This law applies to consciousness as rigidly as it applies to matter. A cohesive, integrated human soul is a powerful electromagnetic force. It fills every corner of the biological vessel. It is anchored to the pineal gland, the heart, and the gut-brain. If an entity tries to force its way into a healthy, integrated adult, the immune system of the soul, the will repels it instantly. The host would die, or the entity would be burned out by the mismatched frequency. To pour new wine, one must first empty the cup. The vessel must be hollowed out. This is why the recruitment for the elite does not begin in adulthood. You cannot take a 30-year-old man and turn him into a vessel. It is too late. The concrete has set. The process requires a mind that is still soft, malleable, and capable of a biological defense mechanism known as dissociation. When the human mind is subjected to trauma that is too horrific to process, it does not die. It splits. It creates a firewall. The core personality retreats, hiding deep in the subconscious to survive, leaving the body running on autopilot. This autopilot state is the vacancy sign the entities are looking for. In 1953, the CIA officially sanctioned Project MK Ultra. The public story is that they were testing LSD for truth serums. This is the cover story. The true purpose was to refine the ancient dark arts of soul fragmentation into a repeatable science. They discovered that through electroshock, sensory deprivation, and ritualistic abuse, they could force the human mind to shatter into distinct, isolated compartments. They call these compartments altars. Think of a computer hard drive partitioned into separate drives. One partition holds the public face, the charismatic politician you see on the news. Another partition holds the family man, but deep in the back, behind heavy amnesia barriers, lies the dark altar. This compartment is kept intentionally empty. A blank slate stripped of morality, memory, and humanity. It is a psychological glove compartment designed to hold the entity. When the ritual begins, the handler uses a trigger phrase or a specific hand sign to bring this empty partition to the front. The soul retreats, the empty shell steps forward, and the entity steps in. But psychological vacancy is not enough. The hardware must match the software. A fourth-dimensional consciousness carries a voltage that would fry a normal human nervous system. The entity is a high-amperage current. The human body is a low-amperage wire. If you plug a generator into a toaster, the toaster explodes. To prevent the host from burning out within weeks, the biological suit must be upgraded. This is the secret reason behind the elite obsession with monoatomic gold. You hear rumors of them eating gold dust, or the manna of the ancients. This is not for decoration. Gold is a superconductor. By ingesting high concentrations of monoatomic gold and adhering to a strict alkaline diet, they alter the conductivity of their nerve endings. They are literally rewiring their bodies to handle the surge of possession. They turn their nervous system into a frictionless grid, where the entity can operate without resistance. If you analyze the hair follicles of top-level globalists, you would find trace mineral contents that are biologically impossible for a standard human on a standard diet. We asked earlier why the bloodlines matter, why the inbreeding, why the obsession with keeping the lineage within the 13 families. It is because the genetics are the hardware compatibility check. The Rh-negative blood factor is not a mutation. It is a marker of non-terrestrial origin. It lacks the rhesus monkey protein that 95% of the population possesses. This specific blood chemistry, combined with the copper-based anomalies found in these lineages, creates a unique electromagnetic field around the body. It acts as a beacon and a binding agent. A standard human body repels the reptilian frequency. The Rh-negative body accepts it. It is the difference between a magnet repelling another magnet or snapping onto it. They breed for this trait because without it, the soul swap is impossible. The entity would slide right out of the body. They are not protecting their money. They are protecting their capacity to be possessed. So we have the vessel. The mind has been shattered by trauma to create a vacancy. The nervous system has been plated in gold to withstand the voltage. The bloodline has been selected for magnetic compatibility. The car is gassed up, the engine is running, and the driver's seat is empty. But the entity is still outside. It is hovering in the fourth density, scratching at the walls of our reality. It cannot just float in through the skin. It needs a physical bridge. A bridge that connects the optic nerve directly to the pineal gland, the seat of the soul. There is only one way to physically sever the silver cord that ties a human to their creator and thread the reptilian consciousness into the brainstem. It requires a ceremony so gruesome, so precise, and so terrifying that it has been wiped from every history book, remembered only in the nightmares of survivors. It involves the vril proboscis and the sound of bone crunching behind the eye. The transfer cannot happen on the surface. The surface of the Earth is bathed in the Schumann resonance, a frequency of 7.83 Hz that acts as a heartbeat for biological life. This frequency is stabilizing for humans, but it is disruptive to the entity. To perform the coupling, they must descend. Deep underground military bases, or DUMBs, are not just fallout shelters. They are Faraday cages for the soul. Located miles beneath the crust, often under major airports or remote mountain ranges, these zones are magnetically null. Here, the natural vibration of the Earth is blocked, and artificial electromagnetic environments can be generated. The ceremony usually takes place in a circular chamber, lined with conductive stone, often granite or limestone, to amplify the ritual energy. 13 initiates form a circle. They are not there to watch. They are there to hold the energy grid, acting as a human battery to power the transition. In the center sits the victim, bound, drugged, and waiting for the vril. The creature used for this process is known in the inner circles as the vril. It is not the giant reptilian humanoid you see in sci-fi. It is a smaller, older biological unit, a parasitic drone carrier. It resembles a lizard, but with a critical evolutionary divergence. Located at the top of its snout is a proboscis, a spiraled, fleshy quill filled with a cluster of high-density nerve endings. This proboscis is the interface tool. It is the USB drive of the dark arts. The vril is an ancient biological machine. bred over thousands of years in the subterranean caverns of the Agartha network specifically for this one purpose. When the vril is brought into the presence of the terrified victim, it does not attack the body. It targets the entry point. It instinctively knows where the connection to the soul lies. It does not go for the jugular. It goes for the eye. The procedure is technically referred to as vril type 1. It is the most violent and irreversible form of possession. The victim is immobilized. The vril creature extends its proboscis. It enters through the eye socket, usually the left eye, as this is the pathway to the right hemisphere of the brain, the seat of intuition and spiritual connection. The proboscis bypasses the eyeball, sliding deep into the orbital cavity until it reaches the thin plate of bone protecting the brain. With a sudden, violent thrust, it punches through. This is the moment of death. The proboscis releases a massive, concentrated dose of the parasitic consciousness directly into the brain stem and the pineal gland. It is a biological download. The human soul, anchored to the pineal gland, is violently evicted by the sudden intrusion of this foreign frequency. The silver cord snaps. The human consciousness is ejected into the ether, often trapped in the surrounding ritual grid, to be harvested for loosh later. The body convulses, the heart stops for a moment, then restarts. But the rhythm is different. The eyes open, but the person you knew is gone. Now you understand the Black Eye Club. For years, the internet has catalogued these injuries. We are told they are clumsy. We are told they tripped in the shower. But look at the anatomy of the bruising. It is not the swelling of an impact to the brow bone. It is deep, internal hemorrhaging seeping out from the socket. This is the recovery period. After the vril type 1 procedure, the host body requires days or weeks to heal the trauma to the orbital socket. The tissue is damaged by the insertion of the proboscis. The entity, now piloting the body, must go into hiding while the connection stabilizes. When they re-emerge, they often wear sunglasses, or the makeup artists work overtime to conceal the yellowing bruise. But sometimes, they flaunt it. In their circles, the black eye is not an injury. It is a badge of rank. It signifies that the transition is complete. It tells other initiates, the vessel is occupied. We are in control. Once the bruising heals, the entity is in full command. This is the drone phase. They have successfully hijacked the vehicle. They have access to the victim's memories, their voice, and their motor skills, accessing the brain like a hard drive. But there is a flaw in the design. The entity is accustomed to a fourth-dimensional existence where form is fluid. It is not used to the rigid, heavy gravity of a third-dimensional biological suit. They get tired. They struggle to regulate the autonomic nervous system. This leads to what we call thermal failure. The body starts to overheat or freeze up. The skin begins to lose its elasticity at an accelerated rate, looking like melted wax. You have seen them on stage leaders who freeze for 30 seconds, unblinking, rebooting their connection to the cortex. These are not senior moments. These are pilot errors. And if they don't get a fresh supply of high-grade energy to stabilize the suit immediately, the camouflage won't just glitch. It will completely dissolve on live television. You assume that once the possession is complete, the process is stable. This is incorrect. The interface between a fourth-dimensional energy form and a third-dimensional biological suit is volatile. It is not a seamless integration. It is a constant, violent struggle for dominance. Think of it like a deep-sea diver wearing a pressurized suit. The diver is the entity. The suit is the human body. The entity must constantly expend willpower to maintain the structural integrity of the human hologram. It is not automatic. It requires active, conscious focus. Every minute they spend in our density, they are fighting against the natural frequency of the host body, which wants to expel them. This is why you see them exhausted. This is why you see them stumbling. When their concentration wavers due to fatigue, surprise, or a sudden drop in their blood sugar, the holographic overlay slips. These are the moments the camera catches. The mask does not fall off completely. It flickers. Just for a microsecond, the true density reveals itself before the entity can reassert control. The most common failure point is the eye. The eyes are not just the window to the soul. They are the most energetically active part of the body. They vibrate at a frequency that is difficult for the entity to cloak. Skeptics will tell you that the vertical pupils seen on live television are merely pixelation errors or light compression artifacts. But ask yourself, why does the artifact always shapeshift into the exact biological geometry of a reptile? Why does it never pixelate into a square or a triangle? It is always a vertical slit. This is biology, not technology. The entity is a predator. When it gets excited, or when it spots a threat, its true predatory nature surges to the surface. The pupil constricts to focus, just as a viper's does before a strike. The holographic software cannot keep up with the speed of this biological reaction. The cloak lags behind the reality, and for 1/30th of a second, you see the predator staring back at you. We spoke earlier of the decay. The human immune system is a powerful defender. Even with the soul removed, the white blood cells recognize the reptilian energy signature as a foreign pathogen. The body begins to attack itself. It tries to reject the pilot. This leads to rapid cellular necrosis. The skin turns gray, the organs begin to fail, and the flesh starts to smell of sulfur and rot. To halt this process, the entity requires a biological fixative. They need a substance that stops the decay and anchors their frequency to the cells. This is the sole purpose of the adrenochrome trade. This compound, harvested from the adrenalized blood of a terrorized victim, acts as a super heavy water. It dopes the cells. It lowers the vibration of the biological suit to match the vibration of the parasite. Without a regular infusion of this substance, the host body would disintegrate within weeks. When you see a world leader disappear for 10 days and return looking 20 years younger, they have not been to a spa. They have been to the tank. They have refueled. There is one glitch they cannot fix with chemicals: the aura. A human being emits a toroidal field of electromagnetic energy generated by the heart. This field broadcasts warmth, empathy, and connection. The reptilian entity has no heart chakra. They are cold-blooded, both physically and metaphysically. Animals and children can sense this instantly. Watch how dogs react to certain politicians. Watch how infants recoil when held by them. They are not reacting to the face. They are reacting to the void. They sense the predator. The entity can mimic a smile. It can read a script about compassion, but it cannot generate the frequency of love. It is mechanically impossible for them. They are actors wearing a meat suit, and their performance is entirely intellectual. They study human behavior like a scientist studies insects, mimicking the movements but never feeling the emotion. This is the uncanny valley feeling you get. Your soul knows there is no one home. For centuries, they hid in the shadows, but technology has become their enemy. High-definition cameras, 4,000 pixel resolution, and slow-motion replay are making it impossible for them to hide the glitches. The veil is lifting, not because of magic, but because of bandwidth. But there is a bigger threat to them than cameras. There is a frequency shift happening on the planet right now. The Earth itself is raising its vibration, moving from the third density into the fourth. This shift is turning the atmosphere into poison for the entities. They are panicking. They are rushing their agenda because their environment is becoming uninhabitable. In the final section, we will explain the frequency war and why the elite are so desperate to lower the collective vibration of humanity before the clock runs out. We are in the final phase of the war. You feel it, the tension in the air, the acceleration of time. This is not just political instability. This is a geomagnetic event. For thousands of years, the Earth's heartbeat, the Schumann resonance, vibrated steadily at 7.83 Hertz. It was a standing wave that locked our reality in place. But in the last decade, observatories in Russia and Germany have recorded unprecedented spikes. We are seeing sustained frequencies of 30, 40, and even 100 Hertz. To a human, this rising frequency feels like an awakening. It stimulates the pineal gland. It forces the truth to surface. But to the entities, it is radiation. They operate on a low-frequency band of fear and control. As the Earth raises its vibration, their environment is becoming caustic. They are like deep-sea creatures being dragged to the surface. The light burns them. The pressure drop destroys them. This explains their panic. This explains the desperate rush to implement total control, to blot out the sun, to lock down the planet. They are not trying to save the world. They are trying to terraform it back into a dungeon because they can no longer breathe the air. The elite know their time is short. Their only strategy left is to drag you down with them. They need to lower your personal frequency to match their dying timeline. They do this by manufacturing fear. Every news cycle, every crisis, every terror event is a calculated ritual designed to harvest your louche. When you get angry at the television, you are feeding them. When you live in anxiety about the future, you are feeding them. The most rebellious act you can perform is to refuse to be afraid. This is not about apathy. It is about tactical non-compliance. When you deny them your fear, you starve them. A population that is in a state of joy, gratitude, and high-frequency consciousness is toxic to the Archon parasite. They cannot attach to a host that is vibrating at the frequency of love. It is like trying to grab a red-hot iron. They slide off. The system is built entirely on your consent to be terrified. Withdraw that consent, and the grid collapses. We are approaching the 0 point. The ancient calendars all pointed to this window of time. It is not the end of the world. It is the end of the illusion. The breakdown you see around you, the crumbling institutions, the exposed corruption is not a disaster. It is a healing crisis. The fever breaks before the patient recovers. The entities are trying to hold together a hologram that is disintegrating. They are patching the cracks with censorship and distraction, but the dam is breaking. The human soul is remembering its origin. You are not a random biological accident. You are an eternal consciousness that chose to incarnate in this specific density at this specific time to be a frequency anchor. You are here to hold the light while the old world burns down. Every time you choose truth over lies and courage over conformity, you are driving a stake into the heart of the control system. The reptilian soul swap is the mechanism of their power, but it is also their greatest weakness. It proves they are not gods. They are parasites, and a parasite cannot survive without a host. They need us. We do not need them. The masquerade is over. The masks are slipping. The vibration is rising. They can no longer hide in the shadows because there are no shadows left. Do not fear the chaos of the coming years. It is simply the sound of the chains breaking. Stand tall. Guard your mind. Protect your energy. And remember, they only have power over you if you believe the lie that you are powerless. The swap is physical, but the victory is spiritual.